If you see the general difference between the two practices, samatha means samatha is to concentrate and vipassana is to analyze. If we misunderstand the analysis, we can understand it as the academic analysis, but here it is not the academic analysis, but it is actually the reflection or introspection. In Prajna Paramita is also written about introspection. So with the saying, the introspection or the reflection was spoken on the basis that samatha is being practiced. So when we see an object and also when we feel through our five senses, it means it refers to analyzing them. So we analyze it with the reflection. I've said this many times, but here the proper perception, we require the proper perception. If you don't have the proper perception, then even though you have the samatha, you are not able to observe properly. That's why I have emphasized on the proper perception. And this is the opinion of the exoteric Prajna Paramitas, 3 lower level Tantra. Here the paramitas, through the practice of 6 paramitas, we enter into enlightenment. We call that paramilsung. 3 lower Tantra is the opinion of the 3 lower Tantra. Here the lower Tantra refers to, in the Diamond Sutra, it refers to the pre-preparation. Here is written the incomparable or unsuppressed yoga, and that's actually the very best or the supreme levels. According to the supreme yoga, vipassana is a practice of concentration. We have to argue on the point that we say we practice samatha first and then we follow up with vipassana, but that is actually the Mahayana, the exoteric paramilsung, and also even in Tantra, at the low level of Tantra, we follow the samatha and vipassana, but in the unsurpassed yoga, the observation itself, the samatha happens and then vipassana happens at the same time. So samatha and vipassana are not distinguished separately, and that is the unsurpassed yoga. And this is Dalai Lama while meditation. I heard that he's doing this unsurpassed yoga. Well, we don't know the detailed content of it. So, according to the unsurpassed yoga, vipassana is a practice of concentration. In this level, it is it is a special understanding method where you concentrate all the concentration power to the vipassana. So here you're not concentrating on samatha, but you concentrate on vipassana, on observation. So Buddha, after obtaining his enlightenment, when he was speaking about the paramita for 21 years, it was all about vipassana, whether it is Dharma Sutra or Pranya Paramita, all these things, all these 600 copies, they started off from vipassana. Regarding this practice method, in our country, especially the practice of vipassana, we don't have them in Korea. We are not aware of it. We only know that there are things like this. On the other hand, Kagyu's Mahamudra and Nyingma's Toksen practice, they only think of vipassana as analytic method of practice. Here it refers to the fact that it is a little different for each sect. So the Kagyu and Nyingma's Toksen and Mahamudra, well, it is also the Mahamudra is the final or the best practice of Kagyu. And Nyingma's also Doksen. Here they consider samatha more important, and concentrating on samatha, they follow up with the vipassana. But vipassana itself is just an analysis. This is almost similar to the Mahayana's paramita, but what Dalai Lama follows in the unsurpassed yoga, it is a little different. They follow samatha through only samatha. So, like Nyingma, they have a little different perception. They are very detailed parts, but you just have to understand that there are many different practices like this. Here, the unsurpassed yoga is also known as Anuttara Yoga Tantra. Well, let's read the footnote. When Nyingma and Kagyu belong to the 4 different sects of Tibet, and they are also referring to the different practice methods. In Tibet, there are 4 different sects, and it's one of them. And they look at 2 of them differently. But in Gelug sect, the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, they look at it different. They think the samatha and vipassana happens together. So when you're learning the sutras, for the proper perception, you are supposed to memorize everything. And through the meditation and vipassana, you have to study them in detail so that you can enter into them deeply without mistakes. And also, the 3 tantras are Kriya, Karya, and Yoga. which except of Anuttara Yoga Tantra. So here the Kriya, Karya, and Yoga, the three things belong to the Tantra. In the Unraveling the Sutra, written by Wanchuk, the Unraveling the Sutra is a sutra that's in between the Mahayana and Hinayana. And this is a sutra that belongs to Yushik. In the doctrine of the consciousness only. In the Unraveling Sutra, Buddha, how can we completely get samatha and be well versed in vipassana? How can we practice samatha and vipassana? And Buddha answer, Maitreya, if you can categorize my teachings as below. We say there are 12 classifications of sutra. The first is sutra, the next is hymn, prediction, gatha, self-exposition, casual conditions, metaphor, iti utaka, the chataka, the principle of the cosmic truth, and the supernatural psychic power and debate. Are there 12? The teachings of Buddha, they've chosen the 12 different methods. Well, Buddha has chosen so many different methods, and amongst them, if you classify them, then there are in about 12 you can make 12 classifications. Why do you have to classify them into 12? If you do not compare, then you will see them as a reality. Well, we say even in Christianity, they have put a metaphor to sense of comparison to the creation of the world, but Christians, they take it as a reality, and so it is also wrong. But you have to make sure that it is a comparison. This kind of figure of speech could also be taken as a lie when you take that. It is someone else has written it, but you take it. So, but Buddha has made sure that when he uses this kind of figure of speech, he will say, I have made a comparison. So what kind of teaching ever or explaining the essential content in order to convey them concretely, they've chosen many different methods, and the scholars, they find out that there are about 12 different methods.
요거는 이제 그 분류하는 방식이 이제 티베트 쪽에서 또 다르게 할 수 있는 방식이 있을 거니까 한번 봅시다.
Let's have a look. Maybe there's a different way of studying them in the Tibetan study. So the sutra here is.
부처님께서 앞에 무슨 말씀을 갖다 산문식으로 잠깐 언급을 해주신 거예요. 이게 이제 사실은 제일 많아요. 그 암경 같은 경우는 이게 대다수를 차지하거든요.
This is the most common.
산문 부분이 있잖아요, 그죠?
This is the most common method of teaching. It's like the three gates, the three things that lead to enlightenment, and
그 다음에 그게 이제 부처님께서 이런 말씀을 하셨다라고 이제 아란이 쭉 얘기를 했잖아요.
And Aran also said that Buddha has this, and so, but the part where there are the three gates,
그냥 일반 내 지금 얘기하듯이 대화체가 아니고 그냥 일반 자기 그 말씀 자기
it is not in a figure of the speech, just like how I talk right now, but he talks everything in the way that it is done, like a sutra. And what is the verse or hymn? The contents which were spoken in the three gates, or the wisdom, comparison, and experiency, since they are difficult to remember, they take them out, and the contents they again organize it in a poetry. Most of the sutras, whether Simon Sutra or other sutras,
내용을 당신이 두 개 정도를 정확하게 기억을 하면
and even the Avatamskara Sutra, some part of it is a poetry. Well, if you remember the first maybe 2-3 lines, then you could easily remember the rest of the sutras. So, even in many of the Hinayana sutras, they have also organized that in the form of a poetry. Memorizing them, normally we memorize what's written in the form of the poetry. Because we have this kind of tradition, even when you are writing a thesis or dissertation, we do not write in the prose form like how we do nowadays. Even Nagarjuna did.
법성계도 그걸 갖다 법성 원용 무이상 7자잖아요. 7자 7은절구로 해가지고 계속.
And even the Babsangge is written in 7 different hymns. So, although it is not written by Buddha, by studying the Avatamskara Sutra, they have organized the form in the poetry, and Venerable Yusang has written in a new book. And then we have the prediction. This is someone asking the question and answering. So in other words, Subari rose and he asked a question, or this person asked question, and then someone asked and the answers. And amongst the Buddha Sutras, even Papagyang was first spoken because of the question. Well, of course, it comes in the form of question and answer, but when they reach to a very difficult part, then Buddha keeps making speech. Well, but then the thing is, if we are not really aware, then we cannot really ask questions. So it's not that the person did not ask the question because he didn't know, but he would ask question for all other common people. So even when the Diamond Sutra was spoken, even when Diamond Sutra was spoken, when disciple asked the question, do you think that people would believe this story? But the question was asked on behalf of all the common people, and Buddha said, in order to give the courage to other people, Buddha answered, there will be people who believe them. And well, it's also a truth, but Buddha has also said that in order to encourage people, well, entering into this Buddhist teaching is a very difficult thing, and you need a lot of courage. It's not like a superstition that you come and go. Well, there's something that everyone can do, but listening to the teaching and entering into the way, and also when we say entering the way, it is not only listening to the teachings, but also the sense of discrimination of others and yourself disappears, and you believe in the afterlife. And that is doing that. It is very difficult. It is even hard to find one person over 1,000.
그걸 믿는 것만 해도
Just
사실은
believing itself,
그 경계가
it is very difficult.
여러분이
If the sense of discrimination disappears and if your greed gets cut off, and only believing that such thing exists, if the person believes that something like that happens, that itself is great. Most of the Buddhist believers, they don't even know that they exist. Forget about believing it. And they also ask, what is Buddhism? And while coming to the monastery, they ask, isn't that also a temple? But if every temple or even every place which looks like monastery temple, then it's two of them. Even the place where it's built to remember the dead, we can also say that there are temples too. So you cannot just argue that that's Buddhism, looking at the outer form, and that's just a mere act of satisfying your greed and just fooling others. I have to keep changing my heart, and also, and by changing my heart, if my heart is very narrow, then I have to broaden it. If my heart is very small, then I should make it bigger. And if my habits are very petty, then I have to try not to have petty habits. Having the petty habit itself is great. If I don't get rid of them, there's no real way to enter into the way. It's quite impossible. So even with Buddha, or even if you go to monasteries for millions of years, it will have no benefits. So with a bad person and Buddha and monastery, they have no relations. If a person who does all the bad things but still claim to go to monastery, they are all cheaters. They're just like a leech that sucks the blood out of monastery and Buddhism, but they are not actually a believer. If you don't try to practice the way, then whether you or me, we all have very strong karma. Because the karma is so strong. If we set rice in the utensil, and if we come back just like someone who came back after a long time, the rice sticks to the utensil so bad. So even if we try to clean it, we cannot clean it completely. And likewise, we not know. And so if we do not practice, and if the strength of the practice is not strong, then as strong as the strength of practice, the karma reduces. But if we don't do that, then everything that was inside, it all stretches out. And because of the strength of karma, you do so many wrong things, and eventually you die after doing so many bad deeds. And even while doing that, you don't even know how you should live, and you will also go through a very lucid state. Isn't that us, the lay people or the common people, in a simple word? Well, this is something that's not related to the teaching, but you should not rest, but you should keep practicing. But what is practicing? It is not sitting down with crossed legs and meditating. But if you look inside the contents of it, it's all about changing the heart. So it is not that it changes because you recite it, but if you don't change it, then it is not happiness. If you don't get rid of your greed, you cannot become happy. There's no way. And in order to make you do that, we are telling you, and even Buddha, the things that he has done, all the things are about getting rid of the greed. And he has spoken about the methods to get rid of the greediness. And without that, you have to know that there can be no happiness. So if you don't practice and if you just continue doing it, well, even the teaching, nowadays I think, should I stop it for some time and resume after some time? Because I've done the Tuesday teaching for 25 years, I think people take it easy. They come and they go, and if they don't take it in an easy manner, well, there are some people who still respect it, but most of them, they think that there should be some very serious serious actions, but still there isn't it. If they sing a very grand song in Catholic, they think it's amazing. But then what's the good of having it amazing or singing amazing? No matter how good is the song or the grand the house is or the performance is, it doesn't matter, because it actually, the point lies in changing of your heart. If you don't change your heart to the seed of happiness, then even for a short period of time there can be no consequence of happiness. So the practice is throwing away the ego and throwing away the persistence for myself. Without throwing them, how can we become happy? If you become happy just by believing in God, then why are they happy, and why do you get sick, and why do they suffer? It doesn't happen in that way. If you say they're almighty, then the people who believe in almighty, well, I think in churches or in monasteries, if they claim to have a very grand majestic power, then they should be sent to the place of where they have mass, but they don't really exist. It's all cheating, actually. Without your practice, nothing or nowhere there can be absolute happiness or heaven. Without you changing it, no matter how much you say, even if Venerable Jinok, I am more mighty than Buddha, all I can do is ask you to study, and I can encourage you to study. Other than that, there is nothing that I can do to make you happy. If you are not doing it, then what can come true? I think I should have done a little more strong teaching on the birthday of Buddha. The grandmothers from villages, they came after a long time. I wanted to say that the lamps here have no meaning, but even that I did not tell them in case they would be discouraged. Well, maybe I should have done it. And if they don't come next Buddha's birthday, then I thought maybe I'm cutting them from the Buddha's teaching also. So I keep wondering how do they do. There are also people who come to monastery once in a month, and if I scold them, then they used to ask why am I scolding them. And if I tell them in a good manner, then maybe they also assume that it's okay for them to come once in a year. And even if I want to tell something in detail, they think the food gets cold. And so I have to think about many different things. And so that's question and answer time.
풍송도 이게 이제
And then gatha, the songs.
뭐가 다르냐면 이 풍송은 고기송이라 그래서 이게 이게 그냥 벚구경 같은 게 보면 앞에
Well, when you see the gatha, when you see the babgugyong, like there's a line there says nothing, but there's only one line of a song. And Buddha has done that quite a lot. If someone finds it difficult to study, then he would just make a gatha and a song line lyrics and give it to him, so that they could remember. And Srivata is one of the very best example because he has so bad memory. And so if Buddha told him some songs, then if he memorized the first part, then he'll forget the next one. And if he goes to sleep, he'll forget, and the next day he again tries to remember. And since it's difficult, he just memorizes the first line 100 times, 1,000 times. But if he memorize the last line, the first line is forgotten already. And so he'll try so hard at loud noise and even in the very low volume. And people around him, they nickname him as foolish. Suribata is in our way foolish, and so they gave him the nickname. And Suribata found it difficult to memorize, and all the shepherds that when they memorize everything because they heard him talking about it so often. And since Buddha found him very pretty, and he asked him to bring a broom. And with the broom, Buddha told him how to memorize memorize the song with the example of the sweeping. And it took him many months to remember one song, and that's not because he was foolish, but that was because of his because he was very distracted. And since our distraction got very less, and since he could now learn how to concentrate, whatever teaching that Buddha did, Srivata could learn it the first. And Buddha's teaching is so great. So Buddha gave him the one song, one gatha, as very suited to him. So if you look at some of the teachings of Buddha, some of them are just done in the form of a song. And then we have the preaching, the self-exposition. Wherever we go, just like Korean Buddhists, they ask things which are very weird. They ask very weird things, like they don't ask about the teachings or Buddha's teachings. And they just say, "Oh, I'm offering you lunch," but other than that, they don't say anything. And the Buddha, when he traveled around, he asked, "Do you want to listen to my story?" Listen to my story. And even in Korea, when I see we have those Tibetan monks, we just give him a lot of things to eat and we send them off. And it's the greatest humiliation for the teacher that you invite the teacher here, but you do not ask them to teach you. In Korea, we did not know how to request for the teaching. If you invite the teacher and if you don't ask them to teach you, then how more foolish can you be? So even in the beginning, for Buddha, there was no one who would ask him to teach Buddha's teaching. So he asked he asked if he could, if they would like to listen to his story. And once he's done with the story, he would ask, "Isn't the story good?" And if they say, there were also some people who said the teaching is nice, but it's a little difficult. So no one asked the question, but he actually answered in order to benefit the others.
그래서 이제 본문을 듣는 사람들의 그 역할이 뭐냐?
So what is the role of people who listen to the teaching? Wherever they are, when you have invited the teacher, you have to make sure that the teaching is circulated. Other than that, there is not much meaning to it. There is not much meaning to everything else.
왜냐하면 법이 유통이 안 되는데 무슨 의식을 하든지
Because if the teaching is not being circulated, then whatever performance or whatever consciousness is there, then there's there's nothing that acts as a leverage for you to change your mind.
근거가 사라졌단 말이에요.
There is no basis for your mind to change.
그다음에 이제 2년에
Next,
관한
we have about the casual conditions.
3세 인연에 관한 얘기를 여러 가지 제가 어째 지금
Well, about the conditions and the relations, there are so many different varieties of talking. Why am I living in this form of life? Then Buddha would answer back in a very good and very kind manner. Because Buddha knows about the past and also the future, Buddha would reply with a very good manner. Because of this happened to you in your previous life, this is happening to you now. And for even his disciples, he would say, when you next gain your enlightenment, you'll be born in this place and you'll be born with that in such a condition. Buddha would give them this kind of teachings too. So even the stories about the 3 different lives, and also the thing that made him encourage him to get enlightenment, and also the many different relations of him and his disciples. Because Buddha spoke about them in a very precise manner, the disciples who listened to him, even for them it was very clear, and even their faith became very concrete. Then we have the metaphor, the comparison that we talked about. Even in the Lotus Sutra, there are 7 metaphors. There are also metaphors in other sutras. There are so many different sutras in Buddhism, in Buddha's teachings. You can see abundant metaphors. So it's also very important to see if the metaphor is given in a very appropriate manner. If the metaphor is done in a very appropriate manner, then it's very easy to understand. Then next we have the Ichi Yutaka, and this is the main content of the teaching.
요거는 뭐냐면 원각경이나 이런 거 그래서 요의경을 얘기하는 거야. 요의의 말씀. 그러니까 핵심적인데 이건 돌려서 말씀하신 것도 아니고 또는 상대적으로 말씀하신 것도 아니고
this is about
직설적으로 바로 얘기한다.
the perfect understanding sutra, so which is not given in a metaphor but just in a very direct manner. In Lotus Sutra, the things written there, some of them are the perfect understanding sutras. So about the enlightenment is written in a very direct manner. And then we have the Chataka, and that is the story about Buddha's previous life. So starting from the Lotus Buddha, and this book is about the book about Buddha's past life is more than 400 pages. There are so many different stories about, so many detailed stories about it, and lies from many lies before to his recent life, about his six paramitas, and also his practice about the Diamond Sutra. And it's all there in the story that talks about the Buddha's previous life.
요거는 이제 뭐냐면
Then we have the principle of cosmic truth. Well,
광범위한 이 기세간의 내용 전체를 갖다가 다 들어서 말씀을 하신 거예요. 화엄경 같은
this is about him speaking about the story that about a great things, great cosmos, not particularly one story. So here it's grand in any direction, and even the size is unlimited.
그래서 이거는 이제 그래서 안에 이 방광의 대방광의 핵심의 내용이 법신이다.
So the essence of the cosmos universe is
전부 다 이게
is the fact that the universe evolves through the voidness of the dependent arising. The universe arises from it and it exists.
그래서 이제 화엄경 대방광원 같은
So even in
이런 것은 대방 방광이에요. 방광경에 관한.
So even the sutras about the Avatamsaka Sutra is about the story of the principle of the cosmic truth. Then we have the supernatural psychic power. Well, from Buddha it is not a supernatural power, but from us it is a supernatural power. It is something that we cannot imagine. It's something very difficult for us to imagine. Why is it difficult for us to imagine and understand? That's because it is something that we have not experienced ourselves, and it is also very difficult to explain in terms of their relations. So
부처님께서 똑같은 부처님께서 천분이 갑자기 공중에도 나타나고 싹 나타났다.
So in the story of the Sarvasi, if you say Buddha, there were 1,000 Buddhas around, even in the air and even on the ground. It's historically true. It's historically true. While he was debating with his disciples, they had a bet about the supernatural powers, and behind Buddha there were 1,000 Buddhas, the same Buddhas. They emerged. Well, for Buddha there is not a supernatural power, but for us it's a supernatural power. We have to think why that happened or how did that happen, and we have to explain. But our way of explanation is not very fashionable. And also Buddha, when he's talking about very old, very thousands lives back, when he's talking about life that's 1,000 years back, for us it's supernatural power because we don't have this ability. Well, since he's a Buddha, he doesn't lie, and so we assume that it's true, so we try to believe it, but we cannot know of it. That's why it is supernatural power. So even one of his disciples, when he first met Buddha, he greeted him. But Buddha did not even ask question about where you're from or how old are you, but he only said, "It's good that you are here." And only with this saying, also to others, he never even asked people to build the monasteries, but to one of his disciples, well, even he did not say anything, but he only said, please come to our country and do the teaching. And Buddha answered, I cannot just come alone, so I'm coming with 1,200 other people, and so please make a room for accommodation. And the disciples said, yes, of course, but I don't know how to build it, so if you could send some supervisor. And that's the end of the conversation. For others, it's all supernatural power. They have no way to know it or understand. But Buddha knew about this from his many previous lives, and even the fact about building the monastery, and he even knew that the person wants to build a monastery, and he even knew his past life, and even knew that they're going to build it. And he did not even say that it's good if you could build it, but he just said build it. And if the disciple did not know about the relations, then he would ask the question, why do I have to build it? I have no money, and he would not have built it. But Buddha knew everything, and he would make such a statement. And when Buddha made such a statement, Buddha has never forcefully asked people to do something, but there is no one who actually refused to do it. Because Buddha knows about everything, and that is a supernatural power. Well, this is something that our thoughts cannot reach, but we cannot say that those things that we cannot even think of does not exist.
보살이 32영신을 한다. 32가지 중생이 원하는 대로
So a bodhisattva can change his form to 32 different forms. For us, it's something that we cannot imagine, but that actually can happen. So those parts we say do not try to explain, because even if you try to explain, it's very difficult to understand. It is something that's just going to exist. Even when you think of the universe, they say the galaxy, there are about 60,000 different galaxies. When they talk about the three different universes, the 3,000 different universes, there are not only 3,000 universes, but the number is unlimited. The number is not measurable, not countable. Well, it's all mathematical words, but for the common people, we only see the stars. But for Buddha, if you talk about it in nowadays, Buddha was talking about the universe that's millions of years away. So, but he talked about this in Avatamskara Sutra. So there is something that's beyond our thoughts. And then we have after the supernatural psychic power, we have the debate. And so what is debate? Buddha constantly debated with his disciples or with anyone else about their opinion. And for 45 years, while Buddha was teaching, the contents about the debate is very, very abundant. The records are done very well, and all of them I'm going to tell to bodhisattvas, and so they need to listen carefully, and they have to remember well, and they have to memorize it, and they have to, and with your heart they have to be able to classify, and after proper understanding of what they have seen, they have to sit at a quiet place. And it's very important to rethink about the things that you have just thought about it. you have to constantly think about it in your mind. In the Unraveling Thought Sutra, Buddha has spoken so. While residing in samatha, you have to concentrate in the essence of the teaching. So while in samatha, you have to practice concentrating to your heart. So the introduction that's done before in Anuttara Yoga Tantra, but this is not something that's applicable to us. So we have to do as is spoken here. While reciting samatha, you have to concentrate to the essence of the teaching. What does it mean by reciting samatha? Because of the concentration, you do not think about others. So because of the concentration, you do not think about others. And in this state, what do you have to do? You have to concentrate on the essence of the teaching. Because of the proper perception, the thoughts. Well, for example, like voidness, or the things about the voidness, or a dependent arising. If you remember them, those various things, then through samatha you can observe. And if you observe without any distraction, then all the agony will start breaking off.
여러분 간세보살 연불 집중 열심히 하시죠?
You recite the Avalokitesvara mantra religiously, right?
해야 돼. 뭐 다른 것 없이 자꾸 연습을
You have to do it.
따라서 깊어지고 달라지니까.
If you do it, you'll get deeper and it will also change. So without doing it, there's not much other method. There's not much meaning, and there's also no benefits.
그래서 자꾸 이제 집중을 해서
You have to concentrate again and again, and you have to make sure that you have only one thought. That means the distraction does not arise, and those distractions arises because of your greed for yourself, and the mind that comes and goes, we call it agony. But those mind that comes and goes, that's very simple one. With the thought that you are obsessed, you have the greediness, and with the greediness, you think if you do this, if the greed will arise, or if the greediness will lessen. This kind of thought, about 99.9% is about that thought. Even you, after doing your hair, you think, I have paid about $30, but your hair is only like this. But that's also the same kind of thought. I told them to put less weight, but they have made it very calm, very curly. I'm only 70 years old, but they made me look like 80 years old. But 70 and 80 is almost the same. So the thought, if I eat this, will it be delicious? If it will be going to be cheap, like that? Or how about going to this place or that? That are all the thoughts that shakes you. And although so many different thoughts arise, if we ask you to organize a thought, it's only the movement between the thought which can make the agony fulfill or not. Well, it's also very harsh, but even if you look at it in deep inside, the thing is that has shaken. So although we say it has lightened, but it's the same. If we say inside the utensil, if the water is dirty, then there's something in it. But if it's only the water, then the water is not dirty. So whether you call it a minute agony or whatever else, but well, because the agony itself is greediness. Greediness is other word for agony.
아주 조금 잘게 쪼개져 있는 것은 안에
So-
마음속에서 파장이 이렇게 탁 들리고
So the minute agony, the wavelength is very small, but the big ones they have a bigger wavelength.
밖에 없어.
It's only different in that manner.
이게 막대기가 이렇게 하나 딱 있다고.
If there's a stick called a grid, and I'm here in the center, and so if I'm shaking this way, then the gap is this much.
그러면 좌우로 이럴까 저럴까. 요게
And so to the left and to the right,
이 생각이 이렇게
when our thoughts move between the profit and the loss.
그러면 여기서는 그거 갖다 이제 좀 많이 잘게 쪼개
And here, if the grid is a little minute,
안에 그러면 요만큼에서 왔다.
then we move between here and there. And even those who can take control of this, then they move at the lower level.
요만큼에서 왔다.
And if you're able to control the lower level, then you move at the very down.
그 이런 사람은 말을 안 하고
Those people, they don't talk, and you think they're very quiet, but even inside, they calculate everything.
황교안이야. 황교안이 어제 보니까
Just like Hwang Yuan, yesterday when I saw him, deep inside, the calculation is so written down, and
보니까 눈빛이
when I saw his glances, I was very uncomfortable.
아주 안 좋은 눈빛이야.
It was a very bad sight.
그런 사람한테 통진당이 걸렸으니 작살이 나지. 아주 통진당이 잘못하고 잘한 걸 놔두고 그런 사람한테 걸렸으니 요
Forget about what's the right and the bad that they have done, the party, but
왔다 갔다 하는지 안 보여.
if you won't be able to see how it moves from the between the loss and the profit, and you're not able to see, but they just sit down with the looks like this.
그러나 이제 이석기랑 그 사람들 그 통진당 그럴 때 이정이랑 저것들 졌다 내가 생각했어. 왜?
So when they were having this debate, I thought they lost. Why? Because Lee Jung-hee on the debate came and said, the reason why I came here is in order to make you move away from this place. Well, outside it seems like they have bigger action, so you feel that they have won, but they can't. Even in the boxing, you feel like the person who moves your hand in the bigger movement, they win, but they don't. Well, if you're unlucky and if you are hit once, then you lose. But the boxing ring, when you see their eyes,
이 서로 주먹질을 왔다 갔다 하면서
and when you see them moving
안 흔들리고
from side to side and boxing, then
한방 탁
you can see how they look at each other. But if you hit the other person and if their eyes move, then if you hit them twice, 3 times, then they will move. But even when you hit them the first time, and if the eyesight remains still, then even if you hit them twice or 3 times, they won't be hit.
권총에서도 절대
So even in the boxing,
주먹이 날아와서 한방
when you see the punch coming towards you, and if you close your eyes, then you'll be hit 3 times, 4 times.
그러니까 권총에서 절대
So at time of boxing, you should never really close your eyes even when you're being hit. You should open your eyes and get hit.
눈을 갖다가 던투어다 다쳐갖다가 은퇴를 했지. 눈을 다쳐갖다면 눈그 시력을 잃을 뻔했단 말이야. 그래서 이게 이제 마음이
So when the mind moves, if the mind moves in a harsh way, then you get angry at each end. The train, when you, in olden times,
기차죠?
not the diesel engine,
디젤 엔진 말고
the coal train.
전기 기관차.
You hear them, you hear the sound of engine, just like the sound of the engine. You can see the fumes come out of them. And if you're in this level,
요 정도 내려오면 말이야.
although the face is very calm, only inside, in your mind, you start calculating. And if you come down deeper, then you won't even blink your eyes, and inside you will start calculating. And while doing that, if you have greed in between and if you are stubborn inside, then the person is a very scary person. It's almost like the person can put out the laser with your eyes. They're like the person at the bottom. They won't even speak, but they will just give you the glance, and from their eyes they will shoot blue rays, just like cartoons. And so the mind, with the practice, if you practice further more and more with samatha, you will come to the triangle, and you'll be able to center your mind at the bottom. Yesterday, our bodhisattvas, our people, they asked me, while reciting the Avalokitesvara, you should not do it like Avalokitesvara, Om Mani Padme Hum. You should not do that. You should not change it in between. So once someone said, I don't know what's the name of the philosopher, but they said, is it good to believe in God or not to believe in God? Well, no matter how much I think, I cannot be sure that they exist, and even the fact that they don't exist is not yet been proven. Well, it's also very difficult to prove that they don't exist for sure. Why is that so? Being there and not being there. Being there is only possible if we give the thesis that they are not there. So even if you have to prove that they don't exist, you have to prove that they exist, then only you can prove that they don't exist. And that's why being there and not being there, it's very difficult. So for 2,000 years, it had not been proven, but still, it seems it's more profitable to say they exist. If you say they don't exist, but if I die and all of a sudden if God comes to me, how embarrassed will he be? At the time of your life, you claim that they did not exist, that God doesn't exist, and you have behaved in all that manner, and so you come to a sudden shock. So maybe if you pretend that they exist, and if they don't exist, then you don't really get surprised. So, well, in olden before, one of the priests, he got only one believer in the village, and the grandmother believed that she would never trust any other god. But while coming back from the market, when she got to the place of the tomb, she picked up a stone and she put it there and started praying. And the priest was so angry. You made a promise in front of God and you still do that. And so the priest was angry, and at the next redemption, priest asked, how can you do that? And the grandmother said, the answer was very simple, because I don't know to which God I'll be reaching. because you don't know. It's same like us. Most of you also do.
예?
No,
안 해? 그래도 어느
you don't know which is better, right?
그래가지고 막 하다가 어느 것이
Since you're not
나한테
sure which God is better, so you recite Avalokitesvara. You've done it 500 times, and then you change your mantra to Namamitabol.
아이고
And when you see the Tibetan monks, they did Om Mani Padme Hum, and it also looked very fancy.
많이 밤매요 뭐또 그런 것은 차라리 그래도 좀
Well, that's we can also say they're innocent,
이제
but
이게
while concentrating
에,
later,
나중에 이
in one end,
표면의식이 탁
when the surface starts to come clear, then you recite Avalokitesvara, and so far, all the things that's been suppressing you, they disappear a little. So even you, when the sense of this, when the sense that your Buddhist disappears a little, then you go to those places where they see the fortune telling. And if you go a little deeper, then where do you go? You go to shamanism. So you go to mountain, and when you pray, you feel very great about it. And if you go very deep inside, in the very center, you can see it's a totemism. So
토텐 샤먼 이런 것으로 쭉 나오면서
all of them, you enter into the ancestor worship, and
그게 또 데다가 그런 불교 의식은
and what Buddhism does, it looks very fine in the outer surface. So some said, if no matter how much you pray or how much you teach them, they go to those fortune telling houses. And I told them, well, I know, but still, even this reciting of mantra, while reciting the Avalokitesvara, then you forget about how you should be doing. The sense of discrimination disappears, and then inside, the things that was inside you, it starts coming out.
또 전에 자기가 좋은 이미지를 가졌거나 또 좋지
And
않은
also the
이미지를
thing is,
가지거나
if
또
you had good
트라우마가
image
있거나
and bad
이런 것들이
image
속에서
before,
튀어나와요.
or the traumas, they also start appearing. Those things, those consciousness that has been suppressed so far, they come out of you. And why they come out, you say, oh well, I'm not able to continue because the tears started flowing down your cheeks. So that's because most of the pain that was inside your heart, they start coming out.
걷어내니까 이 밑에서 튀어 올라온단 말이에요. 이제 그렇게
When that happens, you say, Venerable Jinok, while reciting Avalokitesvara, I am reminded of my father. That's because you have trauma of your father. And like that, when you have the traumas, it comes out. When it comes out, you should let it go. But even doing so, if you continue having the concentration at Avalokitesvara, they disappear. So if the tears come out of you, then you should just let yourself cry, and you should continue with your practice.
그래서 하다가
So while doing that, do not mix this and that.
섞어 쓰지 말고 뭐 여기에다
You're not aware where you'll be reaching here or there. So, and also you should not do that. Well, even if I tell those my believers a lot of times, they keep doing it. Even if when I tell them to do only one, they say they feel a little sad doing only one. Even if I tell them it's the same thing, they say, well, it's about my death. Say time of my death, so that I doubt to which God I should pray. Is it better to pray to Amitabha or
이게
just do once?
한 가지를 갖다
Just
그게 내가 여러 번
well, I explained this many times, but our heart, our mind,
이제 음력이 강하게 있었던 이
were the obstacle that was suppressing you with the concentration.
하다 보면
There's a point of time when it gets removed, and once it gets removed until that point, then it's so depressing so that you could even kill one person. No matter how much you move around or how much you recite the level.Lesson, if I give you the prescription saying that do not move around but just sit at home and do it, you say, well, I feel very restless, and when you start doing it, you feel sleepy.
그걸 이제 막 쏟아내던
The energy that you are moving around until that comes down, you have to hold still. You should not be chased by it or be moved by it. But you say, when I do what Venerable Jinok asked me to do, I feel my body is in pain, and so if you just change to Om Mani Padme Hum, you feel like it's going well in the beginning. But what happens later? You feel the other one is better. The longer mantra is better, but there's nothing like good or better or worse. Well, every one of these mantras, they work on the same ideology, and so they are the same. It only happens. The only changes happen because of your status of your mind, and so when you it's almost like when you screw something, when you put on a screw, the deeper you go in, you have more force coming back to you. But when you feel it, when you know that you have reached the right point, it goes in very deep. It should happen just like that, and you should only make one hole. And that's why we ask you to have one ideology, one aim, one aspiration, so that the thoughts that move around, they should disappear. So even at the time of your death, or even when you're alive, even when you're sleepy, you should try so that you overcome the distraction or sleepiness. You should not do all different things, like a jack of all trades. So when you say you have cached, when you are concentrating on the key phrase, even the key phrase should be one. But you feel that this phrase fits me or doesn't, but that's also not the same. Whether it's Om Mani Padme Hum or level.Lesson or any other mantras, if you start discriminating, if that's good for you or that's not better for you, then the time will come soon for you to stop it. So if you have a tool, and if you have picked up the tool for your agriculture, you should do everything with that tool, plucking the weeds and also farming and doing everything else. And if you continue doing that, because the sense of distraction is strong, if you keep doing it, and if you're swayed by all the thing, and then if you try to hold on to one thing to have the strength, then you'll be shaken a little further. But if you if you keep continuing it, then there will come a point where it becomes less powerful, and that time you feel very light in your head. I'm asking you to do that. You understand? So the practice of samatha, you have to do it restlessly. Because I keep emphasizing this to you many times, maybe you feel uncomfortable, but still, that's because you should do it. Well, in olden times, the monks, they did that. In the cow, you should act like the mosquito that's trying to suck the blood out of the cow made of cast iron. But you should not think that it's not possible. Although you feel that it's not going to happen, if you do it stronger than the karma, then that will disappear even without a trace. We are asking you to do that.
그게 좀
And
사라지기
only if that
시작하고
starts disappearing,
해야 이제 사람이 이제
you,
모습이
you
좀
start
나와.
behaving like a human.
그러기 전에는
Before that,
사람이
it's not even the
아니야.
form of human. There's not much difference between animal.
제대로 된 사람
Then
모습이
only
그때부터
the proper
이제
form of human
나오기
beings will
시작한
start
거구나.
portraying itself.
그때부터. 그래서
So while reciting a samatha, you have to concentrate at the essence of the teaching. Just like it's being categorized into 12 classifications, the teachings of Buddha can be divided into the groups or essentials or the mouth. Like they say, contain the very deep and also very diverse topics. When you practice samatha with the personal perception, you should not fall into useless and meaningless arguments. Whether it's a voidness or whether it's the absence of I, you have to concentrate on the personality itself. Well, this is well. On the other hand, Vipassana is very analytic. Here, the analysis, like said before, is understanding the reality clearly. So, whether it's spiritual or materialistic groups or the senses, just like them, the object of your practice or the origin or the meaning, and also analyzing and observing the characteristics of them. If you accept them and if you repeat them again and again, then you can have the pleasantness of your body and mind. And we call this samatha. And if you do that, the bodhisattva has realized the samatha completely. About this complete bliss, we're going to talk about in the next class. Well, we have a little time, a little more left, so well, I'm not aware of Venerable Chongjang, but from the book he has written, I have a question. While the question, although he wanted to know but could not have answer, he asked the Dalai Lama. As you said in the Buddhist television, well, if you meet Dalai Lama all the time, and when you meet him, what kind of question do you ask, and what do you learn from him? And like me, like people, and also the practitioner, I would like to know what do you learn? And there is a contagious disease around, so please be careful. Well, if you ask what kind of question and answer we ask and receive, sometimes I ask very personal question, very personal question about practice. And while practicing, there are also some parts which I have to organize a little. At times I used to ask them, well, I'm not able to tell you all the contents, but the teacher, we ask the questions about the teaching, and also the answer revolves around the teaching. And so, what kind of question I ask and what kind of answer I get, most of the time, they're very personal, and I don't think it's very personal. I don't think it's very profitable to tell the personal questions and answers, so I don't think there's anything special to tell you. But most of them, while practicing Buddhist practice, when there are parts which are not clear, or when I have doubts, those parts I ask him and I get answer about it. And since it helps our practice, I would like to tell you this much. And also on Buddhist television, I can also see the subtitle about the lyrics. Well, I know about the Buddha's lyric because you spoke about it, but the lyrics of Arahan, they are different. It is not the lyric of Buddha. I saw the picture of lyric on Sokcha Monastery. And beside that, what is that thing that looks like the ball of a ping pong, the table tennis? I would like to know what that is. From what I know, the whole body burned after Buddha's death. I would like to know why is the bone white? Well, it is white in color.
지금 화장터에도 한 번도 안 가보셨나? 화장터에 가서 뼈가 시커멓게 나오나요? 뼈는
The bones are always white even after you burn them.
그래서 이제 아니면 혹시 사리를 분배해서 나올 때 깨끗하게 천으로 닦아서 분배해서 그런가? 아, 이건 전혀 본인 상상이 잘못된 거고.
Well, the question is, the imagination is wrong. You don't clean the bones after it has been burned. I hope you read the interview about the lyric once again and ask the question once again. It's not like the lyric is burned from the flames, but because of its properties, it is white. We are going to continue with questions next class.
끝내도록